What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. As always, it's your boy, the man Welding. It's been a long time since I've come out here and made a video, but I got one for you today. And what I want to talk about is essentially my experience as a welding instructor. Okay, yeah, I really never talked about it much on YouTube. I know I did make a few instructional welding videos during my time as an instructor, but I never sat down and kind of broke down my experience as being an instructor. So that's what I want to do today. Like always, there's no script. I didn't take any notes. I just sat down, turned the camera on, and I'm just spitting off the top of my head. So, you know, don't expect anything too formal. But anyways, really, how I got the job, honestly, it just kind of fell into my lap. I'm gonna try to keep the backstory short, but essentially I had quit my welding job and decided to dedicate some time to pursuing becoming a CWI and trying to break into inspection, right? And during that time, I was still taking on some side jobs, and I was in my garage one day working on a trailer, and a professional associate of mine who I met along the way called me and told me that he knew of a position opening up as a welding instructor at a brand new trade school, and he thought I would be a good candidate, and he recommended that I reach out to the people, the employers, and, you know, talk to them about the position. And at the time, I didn't have anything to lose. I mean, I wasn't working a formal job, so I had time. I always thought I would be pretty good at instructing and thought it would be a cool job, but it was just never something I really considered too strongly. So anyways, he gave me the contact information of the person that I should reach out to, and it was a woman by the name of Jenny Goff, and I gave her a call, and she set up an interview for the next day. And I went in there and I interviewed with Mrs. Goff and one other gentleman by the name of Swindle. I think it's Mike Swindle, something like that. Anyways, they're both really great people, and they liked what I had to say. And I didn't say anything special. I just told them that I had, you know, experience being a professional welder, and I have opinions about the industry, and, you know, I have a lot to offer. And I told them I was pursuing further credentials as far as becoming a CWI. And I think the reality is, yes, I was a good candidate and they liked me, but I also think they were in a pinch and they kind of needed somebody, and I was good enough. So they went ahead and we concluded the interview. And the next day I was at the gym and I got a phone call from Mrs. Goff, and essentially she offered me the position. And this is for a brand new trade school that was opening. The first year we had welding, plumbing, and HVAC, right? And it's in part of the Hendry County School District, which, for those of you who don't know, Hendry County is a relatively poor district in the state of Florida. So, and you always hear these rumblings about teacher salary, and teachers don't get paid a lot. So I was expecting a pretty low offer, but I was surprised they offered me $72,500 a year as a salaried employee on a 12-month contract, essentially. And that sounded great, and I happily accepted the offer. So anyways, that's how I got the job. A little bit of backstory: the county had purchased a building that was basically, we were turning it into a trade school. It wasn't designed, it wasn't built to be a trade school. And long story short, it was extremely rough in the beginning, right? We were super unprepared. Nothing was ready. I don't want to like shit on the situation, but it was a really bad situation that I was thrust into. And anyways, because I was working on becoming a CWI, just the way the dates kind of worked out, I was up in Georgia studying and taking the test for 2 weeks prior to the first day of classes starting, right? So I was in Georgia. I took a 10-day preparatory course for the CWI exam, and at the end of those 10 days, I took the Part B exam. That was on a Saturday evening, and then I got in my truck and drove all the way from Blue Ridge, Georgia, back down to Fort Myers. You know, I got home like Sunday morning, essentially. I drove like 14 hours straight. And then Monday was my first day as an instructor. And I walked into work Monday morning, and the shop was a total disaster. I didn't have a classroom, I didn't have a shop, I didn't have anything. I had no experience as being a teacher. I had nothing, really, you know, to be perfectly honest. And, you know, the students showed up, and I was just like, I didn't know what to do. I was very much in unfamiliar territory, and I was just kind of left to figure things out. So that's what I did. I did the best that I could with what I had available to me. And I don't want it to seem like they didn't give me the tools that I needed to succeed. But, you know, there's a lot of moving pieces when you're working with a school district, and there's budgetary constraints, and you have to deal with vendors, and, you know, there's a lot of this stuff just takes time, and it was all done in a very compressed timeline. So by the time the students showed up, we truly were not ready. But they were there, so we had to make the best of it. But I think the situation that I was kind of put in as a first-year welding instructor, the best way I can kind of describe it, now that I've had time to think about it and reflect, is I felt very much like I was on my heels, you know, and I felt like, because everything was so fucked up, that I felt bad for the students, and I felt like they were kind of, like, in their minds, they were probably asking themselves, like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is a joke, you know what I mean? So I resorted to the only thing that I really knew I could do, and that was get these guys welding, okay? So essentially day one, even though we had nothing, I brought in a few of my own welding machines, and we set up some like very rudimentary welding tables and cut up some scrap metal, and I just started getting these guys burning rods day one, which is not traditional in a welding school environment, right? But that's what I did because I didn't know what else to do. So I felt bad, and I felt like I felt a bit of imposter syndrome, I'll say that. And realistically, I was teaching these guys stick welding, which I'm not even really good at stick welding. I never have been. I didn't really stick weld much throughout my career as a welder. Mostly I did TIG and MIG. So, you know, I was kind of, I don't want to say faking it till you make it, but I was definitely learning as I go. And what ended up resulting is I was able to relate really well with the students. Like, I think they all liked me because I was pretty chill, right? It was loose, and it was chaotic, and it was kind of wild, and I was kind of just like, I was trying to be their friend more than like be their instructor, is what I felt like in the beginning. And you know, on one side of things, that's good because I developed really good relationships with the students. And as I learned throughout my time teaching, is that's one of the most important things, is you have to develop a relationship with the students. But the downside of that is that boundaries got crossed, and there was a lack of respect for my authority. And you know, that makes things a little bit more difficult than they needed to be sometimes. And so the way it was broken down is I had two classes, right? In the morning I had adults, and in the afternoon I had dual enrolled high school students. And yeah, so in the beginning it was a complete fucking shit show. And one of the biggest problems that I had for a long time was we didn't have fume extraction in my welding shop. So everyone's stick welding, and there's no fume extraction, so things were extremely smoky, and it was just a very unhealthy environment. And I was pretty vocal about that, but like I say, budgetary constraints, some of the people who were in positions that kind of could influence the decisions that were made in terms of purchasing, they were cheapskates, and they were looking for the fucking cheapest way out. And, you know, when it comes to proper ventilation and fume extraction in a welding shop, especially in an educational environment, you can't be fucking shopping at Harbor Freight, right? You have to do things the right way. So that was a big issue. But yeah, it was cool. Like, I didn't really have a great classroom for a long time, so I didn't really do much book work. You know, it's like when it came to teaching the guys about oxyacetylene cutting, I spent maybe like an hour in the classroom telling them about it, and then it's like, all right, let's get out there and get going. So it was very much in my first year, learn by doing. You know what I mean? And I learned that's a really inefficient way to teach, because what ended up happening was I would find that instead of like collectively teaching them as a group and then we could all go out and do the skill, it felt more like I was repeating myself constantly and kind of teaching everyone as an individual as opposed to teaching as like as a group, right? And of course the adults, mostly speaking, were like 18 to early 20s, and the high schoolers were like 16, 17, 18, right? Maybe 15. So predominantly young men. And you know how young men are. I know how I was when I was a young man, and I know how I was when I was in welding school, right? When I was in welding school, I was getting high the whole fucking time, and I was fucking, you know, just being a little irresponsible and immature. And I was like 24, 25 when I was in welding school. So I kind of like selfishly had a lot of leniency for the guys in the class, because I'm like, I know what I was like. So it's like, I got to give them a little bit of slack, right? But yeah, it was crazy, you know, and thank God that no one ever got hurt in my class. You know, that's one of the things that I'm most appreciative, is that no one ever got seriously injured. Let's talk about some of the common problems or reoccurring issues that I saw with the students. Some of the biggest things were just like punctuality and attendance, right? I've always prided myself on being punctual and having fairly good attendance. And a lot of these students, they didn't take the punctuality seriously, and it would become a serious issue. It's like, I can overlook a lot, but I can't overlook just blatant fucking laziness and not showing up on time, because I had to commute pretty far to go into work every day, and I was on time every single day, always. And most of these guys, they live 5 minutes away, and they had every fucking excuse in the book why they couldn't be there on time. So that would really get under my skin. And you know, as far as the technical skills of welding goes, everybody basically makes the same mistakes. You know, everybody long arcs, everybody moves way too fast. Everyone has to, you know, work on getting the correct rod angle, finding the correct amperage. Welding is a skill that is best learned by just repetition, right? Just getting those reps in. And it helps a lot having somebody who is actively evaluating you and, you know, pointing out your mistakes and telling you where you go wrong. It's like I told them when I was in welding school, it would be 2 weeks where before an instructor would come in and work with me one-on-one. So that's something that I made sure that I worked with everybody one-on-one every single day. And another thing that was rough for me is, like I said, I'm not good at stick welding, and I was primarily teaching stick welding. So it didn't take very long for a good handful of the students to surpass me in the terms of their stick welding abilities. So it's like I would go in there and try to run a bead for them, and I would fuck their whole plate up because they would be doing good, and then my shit would be all fucked up. So that was a kind of a hard thing for me to overcome as an instructor, was just like doubting myself and dealing with the fact that, you know, I wasn't very good. But the reality is, I'm really good at a lot of other things. Like, welding is extremely vast, and that's one of the things I tried to reinforce for the students, was that, you know, I think people who have not been in the industry, and even some people who are in the industry, have an extremely like narrow view of what welding is. Like, people generally hear welding and they think like a welding rig on a pipeline out in Texas, or like an underwater welder. I think those are the two biggest stereotypes, or you know, when people hear welding, that's kind of what they picture in their head. But the reality is, welding is a tremendously vast industry, and there's so many different processes, and there's so many different applications, and there's so many different jobs under the umbrella of welding. And I didn't go the stick welding route, and I didn't go that way for a specific reason, because I realized pretty early on that I wasn't good at it, right? So I can't think of the word I'm trying to say, but I went a different direction in my career. And I wasn't really able to showcase a lot of the skills that I possessed in the environment of a welding school. So I think there was definitely, especially early on, the students kind of were like looking at me like, this dude is kind of a joke in terms of my welding skill. But that's okay, because the reality is I was pretty good at teaching, and I had a lot to offer the students, and I knew deep down that they were better off with me as an instructor than literally just about anybody else. So that was just one of those things that on a personal level I kind of had to deal with. And it caused me to have to practice. Like, I spent a lot of time practicing so that I didn't make a fool out of myself. Let's see. Something I learned along the way too was that welding is very much like a skill-based trade, and as opposed to some of the other things that were taught at the trade school I worked at, like plumbing or HVAC, and eventually electrical was a curriculum as well. Those are all what I consider to be knowledge-first trades, and welding is very much a skill-first trade. But I always made a point to let them know that, like, yes, you need the skill first and foremost, but you have to possess the knowledge too, because I had a handful of students who were really good welders, but they didn't know what polarity was. They didn't know how to read a tape measure. They didn't know just basic shit, like what type of gas to run for solid wire versus flux core versus TIG welding versus whatever. They didn't know something like the difference between a collet and a collet body. They didn't know, how to change a spool of MIG wire. They didn't know extremely basic stuff. And being a teacher, I realized, can be extremely frustrating, because you can say something over and over and over again, and people will look at you and be like, yeah, I understand. And then they'll go and do the exact opposite of what you just fucking said. And then when you get a little bit irritated, they look at you like a fucking deer in the headlights. Like, they don't know what you're talking about. And it's just, that's just part of the gig, I guess, is finding a way to effectively communicate with the students and get them to actually pay attention. And the reality is, not everyone's going to pay attention. Some people are lost causes. And that was made pretty abundantly clear to me that, and it's kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? A conundrum, but it's like the best students end up getting the least amount of my attention, because I'm having to give so much attention to the fucking shitbag students who really don't even appreciate it. So it's kind of like an inverse relationship of, like, the people who actually deserve to be poured into end up getting the least amount of help, because they're so competent that they don't necessarily need the help to stay learning, but they deserve to get the most attention, because it's like you get what you give, right, as a student. And that's something I always told them, right? You're gonna get out of this class what you put into it. And being a teacher was extremely fulfilling. Another side of it that I didn't really anticipate was how much of an emotional toll the students' personal lives would, like, overlap into the classroom. Like, I had some students the first year, Jesus Christ, like, they'd come in talking about there was a suicide attempt in their family, or, baby mama drama, or, people's criminal past were catching up to them, or people's personal lives were interfering. And, it's like, there's a saying in welding, they say when the hood drops, the bullshit stops. And I tried to always enforce that on the students, like, guys, I got fucking problems too. Everyone has problems, but we're only here for a very short amount of time. So for the love of God, like, leave your problems out in the parking lot. Come in here, focus on what you need to do. and you know, your problems will be waiting for you when you're done here. But yeah, it took an emotional toll. You know, there was issues with immigration and legality, everything across the board. And it's like, I can't, you know, you have a relationship with the students and you care about them, but you can't fix all their problems. But sometimes you realize with some of these people that they don't really have anyone else to listen to their problems, or to, you know, just kind of hear them out. And you know, they rely on you to be that person, and that's a fairly big responsibility. Let's see. Another thing. Oh, geez. Another thing is that, like I said, it's just extremely rewarding, right? Like, so that first year I learned a lot. I learned what to do. I learned what not to do. And then the students graduated, and I helped some of them get jobs, and it was great. You know, it's awesome to see them go out there and make something of themselves. And then in my second year, I don't want to say I had a better crop of students, but I feel like I still made mistakes in my second year, but I was able to apply a lot of what I learned the first go around and do better in my second attempt. All in all, guys, this video is getting long. I'll probably cut it short here soon. I'll speak on this topic again in the future, but walking away from teaching was very difficult for me, because I really did love it a whole lot, and it was easy, and it was cool, and it was fulfilling, it was fun, it paid decent, I had a lot of time off. It was cool, you know what I mean? But in life, you gotta kind of like push the limit sometimes. And once I became a CWI and I had the opportunity to begin doing inspections, I had to take that opportunity. So I had to walk away from teaching. And you know, maybe in the future it's something I'll return to. I always want to be involved. If you're a former student of mine and you're watching this video, shout out to you, because really, you know, it's like I tell the students all the time, and it's so true. There's a lot of really great people in this industry, and not only that, but you know, the biggest part of my success, not the biggest part, but one of the biggest parts, is just the relationships you form with people, right? And that's one thing I will talk on really briefly, is that one of the biggest things I saw that held the students back was they're just way too fucking timid. You know, they're like, they're scared to like give you a firm handshake, look you in the eye, say what they mean what they say, put themselves out there, go and introduce yourself, you know, ask for what it is that you want. Like, I really tried to like beat the timidness out of the students, because, and that comes with time, it comes with experience, I get that, but man, you got to be able to like have a commanding presence if you're going to succeed in this industry. So yeah, that's it, guys. I plan on ramping up the YouTube videos. Thank you for watching. As always, you know I love you. Catch you on the next one. Peace!